Realm presents Ctrl-Alt-Destroy. Episode 2.
The control room for the United States Foreign Conflict Resolution Task Force was somber. It always had that breath-held feeling of a NASA control room in the moments before a launch, and now, Dimple thought, this must be what it was like to wonder if your mission would be scrubbed, if all your years of work would turn meaningless in a single heartbeat. They'd just received a new readout of the leaderboard, both the global board and the deeper analytics that mediated dozens of international arrangements and allocated thousands of resources. Team USA had fallen 3 places in the leaderboard, to number 14, probably a direct side effect of putting in a new player at a much lower level. The light was dim, the better to see the rows of screens monitoring power supplies, freight shipments, tax and tariff rates, troop deployments, and a dozen other things. Dimple's gaze swept from screen to screen, trying to identify what had just been lost. Beside her, the recently decanted player Gregory Dudek grimaced. "Are you sure she's going to be worth it?" Dimple knew that he really meant, "You should have left me in the game." Her fingertips rose to just brush one of the status screens. Power was already being diverted as a result of the change in rankings. The lights were going out all across the eastern seaboard. "I'm sure," Dimple said. "I'd bet all our lives on it." "You already did," Greg said. One. Tandy, class, Veiled Archer, level 1, HP 32 out of 32, status, normal, XP 45, next level, 1000. The dead rose from the ground, soil falling away from naked bone in dank clumps. Any idiot could tell they meant ill from the way they grasped their rusty, pitted weapons. If their mere existence wasn't already proof enough. There were 6 of them in all, crawling up from their graves. Tandy didn't say, "I tried to warn you," but she sure wanted to. "God damn it," Ben said. Dante pulled out his ridiculously oversized sword. "Get behind me," he said, "both of you." Ben backed away, out of striking range, and pulled Tandy along with him. Dante hacked at the first skeleton to free itself, the one with the Viking helm. Ribs were crushed under the force of his blow. It was a strong hit, but it still only did 2 HP of damage. The undead Viking staggered, then raised his axe. Dante dodged away just as the axe whistled by where his skull had been. 3 more skeletons drew closer.
"Edda! Bless them!"
Dante shouted.
"What the hell is bless?"
Edda backed away from the creatures erupting from the ground.
"It's a cleric ability! You should be able to bless them and it'll give them damage!"
Edda waved her arms in an elaborate gesture whose meaning was cryptic.
"You told me to focus on healing spells. I don't have a bless anything!"
One of the creatures stabbed at Dante and scratched his arm. He winced and swore out loud. But it was only a 5 HP hit, and Dante had a pool of nearly 100 HP, so he could safely play at this holding action for a long time. He swung again, and again only did 2 HP, but the skeleton hit him again for another 5. It could keep this up longer than Dante. The 3 stragglers pulled out rotted bows from the earth and began to fire at the living folk. The first volley flew harmlessly into the night. Skeletons, it turned out, weren't great shots. Ben threw a small knife at one skeleton, but it missed the mark and fell somewhere in the grass. Edda grabbed at her weapon, a short, knobby club, and swung it at the skeleton like a baseball bat. The thing scattered in pieces across the packed earth, but according to its HP bar, Edda had done only 5 HP of damage. A little better than Dante, but not by much. Slowly, as if drawn by magnetism, the bones began to reassemble.
"Well, that's no good,"
Edda said.
"I noticed."
Dante swung at the crowd of skeletons to keep them at bay, though a few more of their jabs got through to him.
"How do we kill these things without bless?"
Tandy looked around, desperate to find a way to help, level 1 or not. Her arrows wouldn't be any use against skeletons. They'd just clatter off the bone, doing minimal damage like everything else, assuming she could even hit them. But then she remembered. "Fire," she shouted. "The undead are vulnerable to fire!" She darted toward the campfire and took up a flaming branch. Then she ran back to the skeleton and thrust the smoking branch toward it. She could only just make out the damage notification through the brightness of the flames, minus 30 HP. The skeleton's bar was halfway empty. The creature struck back. The rusty sword darted in and out like a snake's tongue. Tandy took 27 HP of damage, leaving her with only 5. She couldn't take another hit without dying. The pain caught Tandy a heartbeat later, sharp and all-consuming. The scent of woods and fields were real here. The feeling of sun on her face and dirt under her nails, and pain was real too. She touched her hand to her side, and it came away covered in blood. Her blood. She lurched out of range of the skeleton's sword, dazed by pain and shock.
"Man! Now!"
Ben began to chant and wave his hands in an elaborate series of gestures. Tandy knew he was just working the interface, reading the words and touching the triggers to cast a spell. But against the backdrop of the campfire, with his untrimmed eyebrows, the grays at his temples, his booming voice and broad shoulders, he looked for all the world like a real wizard unleashing his power on the world. And then there was a gentle rain of ash and embers all around them. Tandy winced at first, unsure if this Alternus allowed friendly fire. But the human party remained unharmed by it. The skeletons, though, smoked and caught fire. Dante took more hits trying to keep them away from Ben and Tandy, and Etta crunched another one to pieces, but Ben's spell did the hard work. Over slow seconds, the enemy's health bars depleted until they were empty. And then they flashed out of existence. The charred bones fell to the ground and stopped moving. There was a flash where they'd fallen as the experience points notification lit up. But Tandy was too distracted by her agony to really notice it.
"I told you low damage over time could come in handy,"
Dante told Ben, flashing his signature grin. His HP had gone down by almost half, but he didn't seem to be suffering in the same way that Tandy was. "Help!" Tandy croaked. The rest of the group looked back at her. "Oh, honey," Etta murmured. "Let's get you fixed up." Etta kneeled by her side and ran her hands in the air over Tandy's body. There was a blue glow where Etta's hands had been. A crystalline sound filled Tandy's head like distant chimes. Tandy felt like she'd been plunged into cold water on a hot day. The pain receded, and her health bar filled back up. She pressed her fingers to her side. The blood was gone. Not even a trace of a scab, not even a hole in her shirt. Everything was as smooth and whole as if she'd never been injured at all. It didn't even twinge when she moved. "Wow," Tandy managed. Dante laughed. "It's pretty intense, isn't it?" Then he closed his eyes as Etta performed her healing spell on him too. That never gets old," he said. Tandy pressed her fingers to her side again, feeling for tenderness, swelling, looking for the faint echo of a bruise, anything that would show some sign that she'd ever hurt there at all. There was nothing, of course. The VR rig had made her brain think she was hurt, causing a false sensation of pain through magnets manipulating neurons. But it had seemed so real. Everything seemed so real. "I wonder what happens when you die here," she said. Ben coughed into his sleeve a little too emphatically. Dante looked away toward the trees. Finally, Etta answered. "We don't know," she said. "There was a pilot before this. The same full sensory VR tanks, some of the same rules, and not everyone made it back." "What happened?"
"Heart attacks, seizures,"
said Dante, though he still looked away.
"We really don't know if it was related to an underlying condition, or if the process of dying in the game kicks off some sort of response in the brain because the environment is so immersive, or maybe—"
"Got it," Tandy said. She felt sick to her stomach. "You should try really hard not to die," Ben said. Tandy swallowed.
"Try to get behind me during combat," Dante said. "Behind all of us. At your level, not dying is the only help you could possibly be right now."
"I'll do my best," Tandy said. Edda, class, Divine Seeker, level 5, HP, 73 out of 73, mana, 23 out of 30, status, normal, XP, 12,135, next level, 15,000. Edda had been tasked with many a complicated mission in her glittering career as a diplomat. She'd persuaded dictators to lend an ear to their own dissidents and brokered elaborate multi-party legal compromises. She'd dined with heads of state, guided captains of industry to heed their consciences, or at least someone else's conscience. And she'd quietly inspired many a strong personality to give her exactly what she wanted, all the while thinking it was their own idea. Not bad for a hood rat from a neighborhood in Baltimore that prosperity had passed by. If you'd asked her a year ago where she thought she'd be now, she would never have imagined that she'd be struggling to maintain a fragile world peace by playing a video game, much less doing it while trying to balance her own interests and loyalties against... No. Best not to think about that right now. Well, no helping it. Here she was. The camp made room for Tandy a little closer to the fire than the rest of them to protect her in case there was another random encounter. Though their game expert, Dante, didn't feel that was necessary by the classic game logic Alternus had shown so far. They shouldn't be ambushed again, he insisted. At least not if they stayed in the same place for the rest of the night. None of this would matter if we still had Greg, Ben groused. Why in the world would Dimple saddle us with this noob, Dante said helpfully. Edda cleared her throat. There's really not much point in second-guessing Dimple's decision, she said. What's done is done, and we're gonna have to roll with it. Some of us are gonna have to roll a lot more than others, Ben muttered.
We've been hamstrung, Dante complained. We've been hamstrung. Tandy can get ganked by anything with a stick and a grudge. If we have to babysit her, we're gonna lose ground real fast.
Not like we were doing real well to begin with, Ben added. Tandy, seated on the ground by the fire, had hunched over her own knees. Edda thought she could see the girl curling up more and more with every sharp word, like a plastic ribbon someone kept passing a pair of scissors over. Like that ribbon, eventually Tandy might start to shred. This was definitely not a sustainable morale situation, so Edda tried to smooth it over. I've been listening to your concerns, she told her team, or at least the original, more established parts of her team. And we're all agreed that our biggest challenge right now is Tandy's level, so let's focus on that. Tandy shot her a grateful smile. If we go back to Farmer Pokes, I can turn in the quest for a nice bonus, she offered. Dante waved this idea off.
That's too far away from where we are now,
he said.
And it's garbage XP for everyone else, even if it were right next door. There's no sense in dragging all 4 of our sorry tales all the way back across the kingdom so that you can get 10 XP an hour shooting dirty birds out of the corn.
Edda shook her head. Sorry, Tandy, but he's right. There has to be a faster way to do this. We could run around and kill some more skeletons, Ben said. That worked pretty well. Tandy almost died from one hit, Edda said, and we can't count on her never getting hit again if we push our luck.
I know. The quest board,
said Dante.
Let's head back to Knight's Holt and see what new missions are there. Our new player has changed the team balance, so there has to be something. The game will tell us what to do.
Perfect, Edda said. We'll head back to Knight's Holt at first light. Two. The way to Knight's Holt led along a wide and winding road through green hills marked with thick stands of trees. Because of Tandy's vulnerability, the group was as vigilant as possible. Once or twice they detoured a wide way around a suspicious-looking clutch of shadows that might have hidden wolves or some other dangerous creature. But they'd been up and down the road to Knight's Holt a few times before and had a good sense of its safety. There wasn't anything lurking by the main road that they couldn't handle. So Edda felt comfortable splitting her attention just a little more than she had in the wilds, in the interest of seeking counsel from her most trusted teammate. She opened up her private chat window with Ben so she could talk with him secretly as they walked. It was an amazing tool, and she wished she could have had it back in the real world, in any number of delicate, tense diplomatic negotiations. All she had to do was think like she was talking, and the subvocal mic, as Dante called it, would pick up her words and enter them as texts in the window, and nobody around them would be any wiser. Well, they might notice she was a hair distracted and waving her hands more than usual. But compared to Dante and his constant hand-waving as he muttered numbers and formulae to himself, Eda's motions were practically invisible. "What do you think about Tandy?" she asked Ben. "I think this is a clusterfuck, and I'm gonna strangle Dimple when we rotate out of this tour." "Oh, come on. Dimple must have had a reason to put her in. We just don't know it yet. Optimism is for people who don't mind dying." Eda glanced over at Tandy. The girl was acting like she'd stumbled into a wonderland, admiring every butterfly and smelling every flower she passed, not like Dante, who was capturing and cataloging all the bugs and blossoms, though Eda still wasn't quite sure why he was so determined to complete sets. Tandy showed no signs of being a hardened military officer like Ben or Greg, nor even a proficient gamer like Dante. So what was she? "Regardless of how we feel about Dimple's decision," Eda said, "we're going to need to work with this as best we can." "Are you sure she's not some kind of spy or plant? Nothing is hack-proof. Nothing." Eda grimaced at this. No, nothing was hack-proof. But the entire Alternus project relied on a fundamental confidence that their rivals were acting in good faith, and that the open-source system couldn't favor any nation over any other. She could live without Ben's constant suspicion, that was for sure. Her job would be infinitely harder if she couldn't get her team to fundamentally trust one another. Both of her jobs would be harder, and one of them would be impossible. But trust took time, she supposed. She didn't say any of this, though. Instead, "Can you really think that about her? After spending more than 10 minutes with her? I'm not sure she has an ounce of guile in her entire body." Ben backed off his line of reasoning. "We still don't know if she's even good at anything." "She has to be good at something." "You know what I think about optimism." "We'll just have to find out what it is," Eda said. She sighed. Time to bring out a little charm and finesse. Eda slowed her pace to fall behind the men and walk alongside Tandy. "It looks like you're having a rough entry into the project," she said. Better to go with sympathy. It didn't seem like Tandy would respond well to direct questioning, and certainly not after the reception she'd been given last night. "I'm so sorry. It's just that I was pulled into the game on short notice," Tandy said. She ducked her head. "I only just learned about all of this." She motioned to include the entire world. "Literally hours before I got into the tank." Eda mulled this over. So she was a completely untrained replacement. Why in the world would that be necessary? They'd each had substitutes trained in the case of a medical emergency, and she'd met them all beforehand. If they put Tandy into the game instead of one of the alternates and pulled someone as seasoned as Greg out to do it, that meant they felt she would bring something to the team that they hadn't known they needed before they found it. Maybe direct was the right approach after all. "Why were you swapped in?" Eda asked. Tandy blushed furiously. I guess they thought that my work skills would come in handy." "And what do you do?" Eda asked, and hoped it would come across as a neutral question. "I'm a computer programmer," Tandy said. She played with her fingers like she was nervous, hiding something, maybe, and then a rush of words. "I mostly work on migrations of data between different systems of industrial informatics. Just basic flow of intercommunications. It's nothing special." Eda helped her out of her tangle of words. "Do you have any sort of military background?" "My great-grandmother was a nurse at Pearl Harbor," Tandy offered. "If that counts." They both knew it didn't. "Well, if Dimple thinks we need you, then that's good enough for me," Eda said. "I'm sorry if things are a little bumpy, but I'm sure you'll catch up in no time." "Can you tell me more about our team? I only know the basics," Tandy ventured. I suppose you could use a little more briefing." You've met Dante, and it seems like you know who he is already. Tandy nodded. Who doesn't? Ben didn't. Etta laughed. Ben is career Air Force. He's a brilliant tactician and a very skilled drone pilot, but he's still learning about some of the quirks of RPGs versus war simulations. So, a gamer, a soldier, and you. Etta smiled briefly. I'm a diplomat, I suppose. I've worked in the State Department for 15 years, and before that I was a community organizer and activist. I'm the people person. And you're in charge. Or, Tandy glanced at Ben. She was smart enough to know no rational person would put Dante in charge. Etta gave her credit for that. On paper, Etta admitted. She preferred the fiction that they were equal. But there might come a moment when Tandy needed to be very clear on the chain of command. It's not a democracy, but I try not to be a damn fool when my team has a strong feeling about something. Sometimes they know better than I do. And Greg? Etta's lips quirked. He was military like Ben, she said. They were old friends, so don't take it personally if he's a bit... Sure, Tandy said. Etta contemplated her for a little while longer. No immediately apparent skills or strengths, no professional background that would lend insight, and it was clear based on the gaps in her knowledge that she hadn't even been thoroughly briefed before she'd been sent in. Maybe Ben's suspicious mind was onto something. Maybe she was an agent working for another team. It shouldn't be possible, but Etta wasn't one to underestimate the lengths to which the powers of the world would go to get any scrap of advantage. She'd learned that for herself a dozen times before. Such a puzzle. But Etta was sure she would figure Tandy out sooner or later. Cracking people open to read them like a book was her job, and she was very, very good at her job. Tandy, class, Veiled Archer, level 1, HP 32 out of 32, status, normal, XP 445, next level, 1000. The dilemma was a drumbeat in Tandy's head, pounding with every step. Tell them, tell them, tell them. She should tell them she'd made Alternus. Well, sort of. It was as obvious as the sun in the sky that they didn't think Tandy belonged here, or had anything to contribute to the team. Tandy wasn't sure they were wrong either. Just building a game didn't mean you were good at it, per se. But there was definitely a reason she was here. She could clear up all their doubts and suspicions in a second, just by telling them what had happened to her and how she'd gotten here. But she couldn't bring herself to shape the words. She should have told them as soon as she'd appeared in their midst. She almost told them last night when the skeletons had risen to attack. But then it seemed like the moment for such a revelation had passed. Now, if she said anything about it, there'd be an awkward conversation about why she hadn't simply told them right away. There were other reasons, a dozen of them chasing one another around in her head, keeping her mouth shut. Everyone around her seemed convinced that the game she'd made was stupid, shallow, boring, derivative. She didn't want to out herself as the mastermind behind all the elements that they were making fun of. Especially Dante, who could be kind of an ass in his videos now that she thought about it for a while. The worst kind of ass, too. The one who was actually right. And this was Alternus. But it wasn't her Alternus. If she told them she'd made this place, maybe they'd expect her to be better somehow than she really was. That she'd know her way around every corner, the weaknesses of every monster. But even the tutorial mission had been different from hers. What other surprises might they blame her for if they thought she should know everything? And worst of all, maybe her presence here was cheating. She wasn't sure what the rules were, but it certainly didn't seem like the sort of thing that an international agreement would be easygoing about. If there was going to be some sort of backlash about this, maybe they'd all be better off if she was the only team member who was implicated. She should tell them. She had to. If she could just find the courage to do it. But even her inner turmoil couldn't diminish the joy of walking and breathing in Alternus. She bit her lips with anticipation as they drew closer to Knight's Holt. It was one of her favorite places in the game, and she spent a lot of time perfecting a million details, from the sweep of the bridges to the coloring of the cobbles. Still, this game wasn't exactly her Alternus, and she wondered if her beautiful Knight's Holt had been replaced or changed into something she couldn't recognize. They walked over a rise and around the bend, and there it was, just like she'd made it. A dozen spires glittering pink and gold in the morning sun. Long blue pendants flew from each tower, each bearing a roaring lion. Not that there were lions in Alternus, as far as she knew. The rest of the town draped the hills all around the castle like a bride's skirt. Neat tile roofs, brick chimneys, a broad plaza crossed by wide avenues leading into squirrely alleyways. The streets didn't follow the map in Tandy's head, so she couldn't be sure where the armory was or where the guards were headquartered. "I still don't see how they call this a city," Etta murmured. "Trust me, you don't want them to make something that feels like a city." Dante shrugged. "Games like that, you spend half your time trying to learn your way around." "It looks like Disneyland," Ben groused. "Even down to the castle with too many towers sitting in the middle of town." "Too many towers?" Tandy frowned. "I think it's pretty." "How many stairs do you think you have to climb up and down every day if you lived there?" Ben asked. "And all those giant windows, it's indefensible." "It's a fantasy world," Tandy protested. "It's a fantasy world filled with monsters and people with swords who spend all day murdering one another," Ben said. "I'd say defense should be a real consideration unless they're all idiots." Tandy winced. She shouldn't tell them. She really, really shouldn't tell them.
"Let's just get to the quest board,"
Dante said.
"before something decides to attack us."
Three. They passed through the portcullis into the city. The entrance opened into a wide, bustling plaza.
"Over there!"
Dante nodded toward the other side of the square. The quest board was a giant rectangle of cork at the far end of the plaza, shaded from the sun and rain by a charming thatch overhang. There were scraps of parchment tacked to it, each listing another low XP errand in the same structure: tile, color description, level, and prerequisites. The team crowded around it, examining their options. "Oi! America!" An arrow thunked into one of the cross posts of the quest board and stuck there, shuddering. It had narrowly missed Etta's head. A complicated set of emotions flitted across Etta's face. She sighed and rolled her eyes, and then she changed so fast it was like a magic trick. She stood up straighter, her smile warmed, and she turned to the speaker with all the apparent interest as if they were her very best friend. "Hello, Mimi. How good to see you." Mimi was a deeply tanned white woman with gray hairs tangled in with her sun blonde. She grinned so wide you could see her molars. Then she raised her bow and shot another arrow toward Etta. This arrow bounced off Etta as if she were made of Kevlar. It clattered to the ground by Etta's feet. Tandy put a hand on her bow now, ready for a fight. Ben put his arm in front of her. "No damage," he muttered. Tandy checked Etta's health bar. He was right. The arrow hadn't hurt her at all. Etta picked up the arrow and returned it to Mimi. "Your aim is getting better." "Where's Greg?" Mimi asked. "And who's the new kid?" She circled Tandy, admiring her like she was a marble sculpture. Etta shrugged as if the question were irrelevant. "Personnel change." "And you swapped out Greg instead of this dour asshole?" Mimi nodded toward Ben. "Why would you do something so stupid?" Etta laughed. It was rich, throaty, and Tandy was sure it was completely fake. "You'll just have to keep wondering about it, Mimi." Mimi smiled. "Can't fault me for asking," she said. A chime sounded like a warm, rich gong. "Leaderboard," Dante blurted. At the same time, a notification appeared before Tandy's eyes. The leaderboard had been updated. She saw her companions all raise a hand to tap at the air, each of them expanding the notification. She did the same. She was confronted with a list of nations in ranked order, each with a numerical score and an arrow indicating whether their rank had moved up or down since the last time it had been updated. USA was number 14, down 4 places from last time, and only just 1 step above France. Tandy couldn't help but feel responsible for that. The top of the leaderboard was 1. Canada. 2. Korea. 3. Russia. 4. Brazil. 5. United Kingdom.
How is Canada doing so well?
Mimi demanded of no one in particular.
It doesn't make any sense. They're a bunch of bumble-assed ice morons.
Maybe they're only morons when they know someone is looking, Ben said.
Nobody can act like a moron that convincingly.
Mimi tossed her bow over her shoulder.
Well, I should get back.
I've got some important business with a half-ogre to sort out, something to do with a lullaby. You know how it goes. It's been fun. Then she winked at Tandy.
Good luck, new Miss America. You're going to need it.
She whistled as she walked away. That was another player, Tandy said.
Team United Kingdom,
Ben said.
Bunch of smug assholes.
No, they're British, so it's arseholes,
Dante said, laughing. Tandy pulled the first arrow out of the side of the quest board.
What was that all about with the shooting?
Mimi has a weird sense of humor,
Etta said.
There's no player versus player in the game, so she knows it won't hurt anyone,
Dante added.
A lot of the other teams take pot shots at one another to say hello. You get used to it.
Tandy stared at the arrow. It was a lot sharper than the ones in her own quiver. Sure, you get used to it. So, Canada is the best, then? What else should I know about the other teams?
Nothing, really.
Ben adjusted his robes. We've barely run into anyone else so far except here in town. We all had different starting points, so we don't even know where some of the teams are. We haven't seen Nigeria yet, or Korea, or Brazil.
And for the ones that did start near us, well, we've all had different quest lines so far.
Dante nodded at the board.
They probably don't even see the same quests here that we do.
For now, Ben said. He glowered. You know what Greg kept saying. What? What did he keep saying? Tandy looked from one face to the other. Nobody seemed to want to answer her. Etta broke first.
He kept saying it starts out easy but doesn't stay that way.
Tandy made a quizzical noise.
Greg was part of the pilot game before this tour duty,
Etta said gently. His role on the team was supposed to be using his experience in the precursor game and to extrapolate for this session so we'd have a better idea of what to expect.
Oh,
Tandy said, and then snapped her mouth shut before her team could ask any questions. Suddenly it all made sense. If Greg's job was to be the expert on the game from last time, then yeah, swapping Tandy in with her very specific insights would be an amazing tactical advantage. She should tell them. She should just get it over with and tell them. She opened her mouth again. She turned back to the quest board. Okay then, let's find us a good quest to level me up so we're ready for anything. She scanned the messages for a while, then plucked one off the board. This one. We should do this one. Dante frowned and took the scrap out of her hand.
Prisoner of Stone. Innkeeper Bell's niece has been kidnapped by a pack of gargoyles in the Rocky Hills outside of town. Won't someone please rescue her? Levels 4 to 6. To begin, speak with Innkeeper Bell at the Bell and Bones.
He lowered the paper.
Levels 4 to 6? That's too high for you, Tandy. You'll die for sure.
I can do it, Tandy insisted. The ink is color-coded green. That means it's not a combat mission like the red ones. I'll be fine. Dante opened his mouth, a quizzical look on his face. It's like that in lots of games, she added hastily.
It is,
he agreed. though that shadow of doubt continued to hover over his eyebrows. Etta scanned the rest of the quests on the board. "I don't see anything else suitable for anyone under level 5, she said. "So this might be our only option, unless we want to go back and whack at forest animals again for a few days. What did you call that? Bumping?"
Grinding,
Dante said. "That's not what we call grinding back home," Etta murmured. "Let's get started," Tandy said. "The Bell and Bones is just down the alley. I bet." The Bell and Bones wasn't where Tandy thought it would be, but eventually they found it. A squat 2-story building of stone with broad, diamond-paned windows tinted all the colors of the rainbow. Inside, the color-bathed light lent the establishment a festive air, as if it were ready for a party. But no party was present. Almost nobody was. There was an innkeeper sweeping the spotless floor. And there was a cloaked figure in the corner, huddled over a mug of ale. There were 6 empty flagons on the table, and a pungent smell that indicated someone who'd put some time and dedication into the process of getting drunk. The cloaked figure glanced up. Candy-colored light flickered off scarlet irises. "It's you," Zin the Seeker said. She wobbled on her stool. "You still haven't finished Poke's pesky prowlers." "I know," Tandy said, apologetic. "I know I should, but—" "You should, and you can. Are you going to go now? If you forget where it is, I can bring you back." Zin looked desperate, even manic. She tried to stand, but got tangled in her cloak and fell back onto her seat. "We can go right now," Zin said. "Let's go right now."
"What happened to thee and thou?"
muttered Dante.
"The writers can't even maintain basic continuity."
"Maybe she can't keep up the act when she's drunk," Ben answered. "We're, a little busy," Tandy told Zin. She waved the paper from the quest board at her. "Do you know where to find—" "Why do I even bother?" She stared daggers at Tandy. "All I want to do is help you. But no, you don't need help from the likes of Zin the Seer." "Oh, come on." Tandy patted her awkwardly on the shoulder. "I'm sorry about the Farmer Poke quest. I've just been busy." "Busy doing what?" Zin stood suddenly and jabbed Tandy in the sternum with a bony finger. It did no damage, but somehow it hurt all the same. "Just you wait," she hissed. "One day you'll be sorry. One day you'll come crawling back wishing you had Zin to help you out. And I won't be there." Dante pulled Tandy back away from Zin's table.
"Give it up, Tandy. This is an NPC. She's putting on a good show for us, but you have to remember that she doesn't have any real feelings."
"She might not," Tandy said. She lifted her chin up. She'd had this argument hundreds of times before in other games, and she was cemented into her own position. "But I do. And ignoring someone who looks like they're suffering turns me into a worse person because—" Something about parasocial relationships and priming. Dante rolled his eyes.
"You're only letting a dialogue tree in instead of wasting your time making a pretend computer person pretend to feel better. You're not committing genocide. Get some perspective."
Zin glowered at both of them and signaled to the innkeeper for another ale, which was swiftly delivered by a round-cheeked and round-bellied black woman in an apron and lace-trimmed mob cap.
Is this supposed to be Middle Earth or Colonial Williamsburg?
Tandy turned back to Zin, but the guide NPC sulked into her mug, apparently determined to pretend they didn't exist. "Are you adventurers?" The innkeeper pounced on the lull in the conversation. "If that's what you want to call it," Ben said. "Oh, won't you please help my niece?" Innkeeper Bell gathered her skirt in her hands beseechingly. "She was captured by—"
"Skip,"
Dante said. "Here's the map," the innkeeper said. A new window popped up on Tandy's heads-up display and presumably everyone else's too. It was a full-color map of the local territory with a glowing green marker where Bell's niece was. "Don't skip," Tandy crossed her arms. "There could be important information in what she has to say." Dante rolled his eyes, but didn't stop her when she turned back to Bell and asked, "How was she captured?" Belle looked uncertainly from Dante to Tandy and back again. "My niece is a traveling merchant," she said. "She was supposed to turn up a week ago, but I haven't heard anything from her. The last time she was here, she was talking about taking a shortcut through gargoyle turf, and she probably got captured."
"Give me a break," Ben said. "How does she know exactly where her niece is if she's supposed to be missing?"
"It's a game convention," Tandy said. Belle continued her monologue. Please, can you help her?" "Of course," Tandy said. She smiled encouragingly. "But it's going to be dangerous," Belle warned. "You can't fight the gargoyles. They can kill you with one fingertip. You have to outsmart them."
"Ha! I told you it wasn't a combat mission," Tandy said loftily.
Etta didn't say anything, but she sure did look at Tandy thoughtfully. "Let's just go." Dante stalked through the door, giving off a comic tale of annoyance. Innkeeper Belle called after them, "Be careful and be clever."
"We will,"
Tandy promised. "Don't worry, we'll have your niece back in no time at all." Fortunately for all of them, Innkeeper Belle's map was clearly marked and easy to follow. Before venturing out, Team USA huddled in the plaza, examining the distance and trying to work out if they could make it before sundown. It wasn't clear if there were still skeletons lurking tonight, but it wasn't something anyone wanted to chance. It was a simple route. Take the road out of Knight's Holt, but instead of plunging straight into the hills, they took a sharp turn towards the mountainside and toward the looming skull-shaped peak. It wasn't very far, across the river, down a ravine, and into a maze of canyons and caves. They eventually agreed they could make it in time, and Dante pointed out that there was certain to be a safe campsite somewhere near the gargoyles' terrain. Their route decided, the team set out without further delay. The guards saluted them as they left Knight's Holt.
"Safe travels, adventurers," shouted one. "I wish I could join you in the fun."
Dante winced.
"What?" Tandy asked. "I thought that was nice."
"He says it every time," Dante said. "It's as bad as the arrow to the knee guy in Skyrim. I wish the procedural generation would get off its ass and procedurally generate some new dialogue for them."
Before Tandy could take umbrage at that, Dante darted off to grab a blue-footed frog he'd seen hopping out of a rotted timber. They passed through the hills without mishap and made their way toward the river crossing. There was a stone bridge spanning the water in a single crumbling rustic arch. Below it, the river ran fast, kicking up a veil of mist that obscured the far banks and even the center of the bridge itself. Dante frowned as they drew closer.
"Wait. Did you hear that?"
He pointed toward the bridge.
"It's coming from over there."
Sure enough, there was a faint, rough sound coming from it, like a piece of construction equipment idling. Dante held his fingers to his lips and crept closer. The team followed behind him as slowly and silently as they could. There was a round shape in the middle of the bridge, green like Shrek with the loose, wrinkled skin of an elephant. It was the size of a garbage truck, and the smell wafting from it only supported that impression. The creature scratched at its belly, then rolled over, one enormous arm dangling off the side of the bridge.
"What the ever-living fuck is that?"
Ben asked. He raised his staff as if he meant to attack then and there.
"Shh," Dante said. "Don't wake it up."
They retreated to a safe distance.
"Seriously, what is that?" Ben asked.
"It's a troll,"
Dante said, utterly deadpan.
"You can tell from how it says troll right there on its information bar."
Ben glowered at him. "Listen, kid. While you were playing around shooting pixels, I was in Gaziantep getting shot at for real. Don't talk down to me. We all have our strengths," Etta said with a sharpness in her voice. Tandy got the impression that she'd heard this argument before and meant to nip this iteration in the bud. "What's our plan of attack?" Ben asked. Dante looked at her sidelong.
"Tandy, Tell me what color that thing is for you.
What? It's obviously green, Ben protested. But Tandy knew what Dante was getting at. Its health bar is black for me, Tandy said. She hung her head.
Yellow for me, Dante said. So it's above our group level, but ordinarily we'd be able to chance it. Well, with Greg we could. But it would take all 4 of us to beat it, and if it got one hit on you, Tandy, you'd be dead.
The same problem as always.
Is there an alternate route?
Etta asked. Her eyes were unfocused. She was probably already looking at the map. They all quieted as they examined their maps too. Tandy smiled at the picture they made. A collection of 4 people, each staring into their own private imaginings. Dante had a wisp of a dissatisfied frown, growing the longer the question hung there. Then Ben edged closer to the near side of the bridge and looked at it with his own eyes. He waved them over and whispered,
It looks like there's a way to cross under the bridge. If we're quiet, we should be able to escape the troll's attention.
Sure enough, there was a series of stepping stones twining around and through the pillars supporting the bridge. Although they couldn't be sure that they reached all the way to the other side, it seemed reasonable to guess that they would.
Sounds like a plan,
Etta said.
Let's go.
As they made their way closer to the edge of the water, Tandy wondered if she shouldn't put her spare skill point into sneak. She popped onto a chat window and almost asked Dante, but lost her nerve at the last minute. Something about asking a question in private seemed a little too weird. Up close, the stones were slick and green with algae and spaced a bit more than a hop apart. Tandy paused and looked out at the water. The depths were black, but the current roared past in a furious torrent. Do we know how to swim?
What?
Ben asked.
Do you know how to swim, Tandy?
Etta asked slowly. I do in real life, Tandy said. I could swim before I could walk, but is swimming a skill here, or is it not? Am I going to drown if I slip and fall into the water?
Don't know, Dante said. It hasn't come up before. You chicken?
Tandy took a deep breath. I'll try not to find out, she said. They stepped from stone to stone as carefully as possible. In the end, their progress was so slow that they might have gone faster simply by walking upstream to find another bridge. All the while, the troll snored above them in great, heaving breaths like a legion of motorcycles. At one point, the troll shifted, and its hand, easily the size of a human being, swept right between Tandy and the rest of the team. They all froze. The hand hung there, furry knuckles flexing. Tandy discovered that the troll's fingernails were curiously delicate, rounded at the tips like they'd been manicured and bearing a glossy, even iridescent sheen. Tandy squeezed her eyes shut and offered a prayer to any divine being that might be interested in her plight. And then she reopened her eyes and inched her way past the troll's hand, slow as molasses, quiet as the moon, holding her breath so no stray exhalation might wake the beast. Finally, they arrived safely on the other side. That was close, Ben said. It was just a little too loud. The troll stirred and sat up on the bridge. It looked around and spotted them. It growled and began to make its way to its feet. Fuck, Dante said, and Etta shouted, Run! The foursome pelted down the hill and away from the bridge toward the ravine and the gargoyles and the innkeeper's missing merchant niece. The troll followed them at first and plucked whole trees from the ground and hurled them toward the group. But it soon lost breath and lost pace with them. They ducked into a crack in the cliffside, much too small for the troll to enter. The creature peered at them and even squeezed its hand into the ravine to try to grab someone, but the group retreated far enough into the crevice that it couldn't reach. At last, the thing gave up and returned to its bridge. They looked around to get their bearings. I think we're here, muttered Etta. This is where we're supposed to look for the gargoyles, isn't it? The land of the gargoyles was all but monochrome, gray upon gray, streaked with an occasional patch of muddy taupe. The crack in the cliffside they'd first entered led to a maze of narrow, branching passages. They were open to the sky, but the light was fading by now, and the walls were wreathed in shadows. Tandy fancied that they were moving, though of course it was a trick of the light. They ventured deeper into the maze, doubling back when they hit a dead end. The map, while otherwise complete, didn't show them a direct path toward the gargoyle's hive itself. Then Tandy caught a glint of red from halfway up the wall. Before she could even shout a warning, the gargoyles were upon them. The gargoyles were perfectly camouflaged in their environment, the same grays and taupes, the same crags and hollows. One of them winged down and struck at Ben, knocking him off his feet. Another grabbed Tandy by the scruff of the neck and began to drag her away. She kicked at the air and tried to stab at the gargoyle with an arrow, but the stem of it snapped. Dante leapt as high as he could with his sword, but he couldn't hit anything. Etta called, "There are more! Stay low!" Ben had begun chanting, the same spell that had caused the ashfall that had taken down the skeletons. Embers began to rain from the sky, but it had no effect on the gargoyles. The creatures laughed like the wind. And two grabbed Ben, one gargoyle for each arm. A trio chased Dante and Etta, but the pair fled. Tandy didn't see what happened after that. The gargoyle hauled her up above the maze, then straight on toward an opening in the mountainside. She couldn't see where she went after that. It was too dark. But eventually the monster flung her down into something prickly and sweet-smelling. Straw. Another body fell into her. She untangled herself. "Ben," she whispered. "Yeah," he said. "Do you have a torch?" she asked. "Hold on." He muttered a few words and a ball of white light coalesced around his fingertips. He flicked his hand and the light rose up above their heads. They got a good look at their surroundings. The gargoyles had shoved them into a makeshift cage of splintering wooden boards nailed together. A pair of their captors hunkered by the door, as motionless as the stone they so closely resembled. There was the straw on the floor, as well as a filthy bucket. In the corner was the target of their search, a slim woman in a peasant top and a long brown skirt. She huddled against a wall, arms wrapped around her knees, and didn't respond when they spoke to her. "We're supposed to believe she's a successful merchant?" Ben asked, his voice pitched low so the gargoyles wouldn't hear him. "Maybe she's in shock," Tandy said. Ben sighed. "Well, we need to come up with a game plan." He ran his fingers over the slats. "These are pretty brittle. If we try hard enough," he said, "I bet we could break out of here." "But then the guards will just catch us again," she said, "and we already know we can't beat them in a fight." "We could if Dante and Etta were here." "But they're not." Ben grunted, the closest she'd yet come to getting agreement out of him. The team's chat window popped up. It was Etta. "Are you okay?" "Captured, but uninjured," Ben responded. "Can you come in after us?" Dante responded. "We can't touch those gargoyles. I think they're invincible. Tandy might be right. There's gotta be another way through this." Tandy paced the confines of the cage. "Maybe we're supposed to get captured. I'll see what we can do from in here." "Keep us posted," Etta responded. "We'll come running if you think it'll help." Tandy plucked at the straw on the floor. "Do you know what this reminds me of?" "No," Ben said. She looked up at him, but she wasn't seeing him. She'd written something similar in her game. The details were different, but not so different. She had an innkeeper's daughter kidnapped by goblins, and it was in a swamp, not in caves. I wonder... If it was like the quest she'd written, then she might be able to get them out of this in less than half an hour. She crossed over to the door. She rattled it. "Hey! Hey, guards! I bet you're really bored, right? Let's cut a deal." A gargoyle approached like a winged monkey walking on its knuckles. "You interest me, human. What kind of deal do you propose?" "Let's play a game," she grinned. Whatever kind of game you like. And if I win, you let all 3 of us go. If you win...
We have everything we could want,
the gargoyle said. If you win, at least you'll have had some fun, Tandy said. It sounded terrible as it came out of her mouth. She'd been really tired when she'd written that quest, and she was starting to have doubts about how she'd done it. But no sense trying to fix it right now. And it was all for the best that there was a loophole allowing her to issue the challenge even as hostages, even though there really wasn't anything in it for the gargoyles. Ben reached a similar conclusion.
Why would they ever take you up on it?
Because it's a game? The gargoyles, though, had bent together, whispering to one another in their rushing, susurrant language.
This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life,
Ben said.
And I already thought this whole Alternus crap was pretty stupid.
Tandy arched an eyebrow at him, but then the gargoyles opened the door for her. Hold that thought. Gotta work the system, she said. You can thank me later. Five. The gargoyles brought Tandy to a wide, round room, like an underground arena. The ceiling was so high above that she couldn't see it, but thankfully there was enough light to make out the floor and walk safely. There were huge pans of fire on tall stilts marking the edge of the circle. A gargoyle with a patch of lichen across half his face waited in the middle of the ring.
We have a challenger,
said one of the guards.
At last,
Lichen Face responded, then launched itself up and flew the perimeter of the arena 3 times, shouting,
We have a challenger! We have a challenger!
A crowd of gargoyles collected in the room, though most perched on tiers of ledges lining the walls. Like books on a bookshelf, Tandy thought, though she wisely decided to keep that analogy to herself. The lichen-faced gargoyle landed in the center of the ring.
Challenger, approach,
it said. The other gargoyles whistled by way of cheering. Tandy tried to relax her jaw and shoulders. This was going to work. It had to. She whispered along with the next words the gargoyle said.
This is a challenge of wits. Riddle me this, human.
She laughed out loud, giddy with relief. It was her test. That was her line. Tell me your riddles, she said, and I will gladly solve them. The gargoyle spread its wings.
The more you see of me, the less you see. What am I?
Tandy grinned. It was her riddle. Or at any rate, one she'd taken from some list of riddles she'd found to avoid having to think up good riddles on her own. The darkness, Tandy said without hesitation. The gargoyles whispered to one another in consternation.
You are correct, it said. But your luck cannot hold, human. Do you wish to back away with your dignity intact?
Tell me the next riddle, she said. The gargoyle stood tall on its hind legs.
Feed me and I live. Give me a drink and I die. What am I?
Fire, Tandy said instantly. The gargoyles whispered even louder. A few flew above her, crossing to new vantage points.
You have done well so far,
the lichen-faced gargoyle said, though it sounded salty about it.
This is your last chance. If you try to answer the third riddle and fail, then we will kill you.
It leaned forward on its hands to put its face close in front of Tandy's. That was different enough from how Tandy had written it to give her a moment's pause, but only a moment. She bit her lip. The only way out was through. Just give me the third riddle, she said, her heart pounding.
Say my name, hissed the gargoyle, and I vanish. What am I?
Riddles, Tandy thought, were much easier to solve when you were the one who'd put them into the game. She raised her chin. "Silence," she said. And at that, there was indeed a silence that spanned the circle and all the gargoyles as if they'd truly been turned to stone.
"You are correct,"
the gargoyle said at last.
"Damn you!"
A notification appeared, plus 1200 XP. Tandy's experience bar filled up to the top, then it reset and filled up halfway again. A shower of white sparks rained down around Tandy, and a zingy sensation raced across her skin like she'd been plunged into a tub of seltzer. A new notification appeared. "Congratulations. You have reached level 2. The gargoyles hissed at one another, disappointed in her victory. But true to their word, they shepherded Tandy toward the entrance of the hive where Ben and the innkeeper's niece were already waiting for her. Ben coordinated with Etta and Dante so that the team could meet again at the entrance to the maze where they'd escaped from the troll only hours before. There was no sense in pushing on through the night. It would be too risky to travel on an escort mission in the dark. So they made a campfire and settled down for the night. Ben and Tandy filled the others in on what had happened in the gargoyle hive.
"She did some good work,"
Ben told the team, though grudgingly.
"She may just be an asset to the team after all."
Tandy pressed her lips together and looked at her hands in her lap. She should tell them. She should really tell them. She was going to tell them. Just not yet. Dante. Class, Bladed Guardian. Level, 6. HP, 100 out of 100. Status, normal. XP, 16,975. Next level, 21,000. Dante stared into the campfire until it sparked, and then he started counting seconds. If he was right, it would spark again in another 73 seconds. The flames danced, smoke rose toward the stars. The skybox, he reminded himself. And not an especially good one either. Whatever artist or algorithm had made it had gone way overboard with stars and shading, so it looked like his cousin's quinceañera dress up there. He appreciated more subtlety than that. 71 seconds, 72. There was no spark. Interesting. So the fires here weren't a short animation on a loop after all, like they were in a regular game. In order to better understand the hidden workings of the game and find ways to cheat them, he'd been trying to find the cracks in the world, the seams where different pieces of code joined together, where this world worked differently than the real one. But this one was so real. The VR was better than anything he'd seen on the commercial market, almost like it wasn't a game at all. He wasn't in danger of forgetting, but he had a feeling he'd have to keep reminding his team. "Thank you for saving me," Clara said, her voice sharp in the quiet. Well, maybe they wouldn't have as much trouble remembering as they thought. Clara was the innkeeper's niece, but they only knew because of the name tag hovering over her head. Clara herself was uninformative. She had about 4 things she could say, and they were, "Thank you for saving me. I thought I was going to die here. Oh, I'm sure I wouldn't know about that." And, unaccountably, "I hope it doesn't rain." At first, Dante had worried that meant it was about to start raining, but it had been hours and no sign of a single drop.
"What the hell is wrong with her?"
Ben asked.
"Did the gargoyles hit her too hard on the head or something?"
Lazy coding, Dante said. She's not a person, Ben. She's more like a ball in a soccer match. It's a little surprising that the AI didn't give her any more depth than this, though. This is the worst we've seen so far, and everything we've seen has been pretty terrible.
"Maybe we weren't supposed to talk to her," Tandy said. She seemed nervous. Then again, she'd seemed nervous ever since she'd gotten here. Maybe nervous was her baseline existence. Well, maybe she just needed a little help getting used to the environment. She clearly wasn't an experienced 24/7 tournament gamer like him.
Have you spent your new skill point?
He asked her. She gave him a funny look, then, "No, I haven't decided yet," she said. "I feel like herb knowledge could come in handy or quick shot, but maybe I should just pick up lock picking. I just hate the idea that I'll make a wrong decision." She smiled. "You're higher level than I am, so you already know where some of these grayed out branches lead, right?" He pulled up the skill tree and frowned at it. His specializations so far were all around taking less damage and infuriating monsters to make himself into a better human shield for the team.
Yeah, I could tell you where some of the branches lead, but
What?
don't spend it yet.
He said.
If there's nothing you clearly want to spend it on right now, hold off so you have it when something urgent comes up.
Really?
Do you feel like you have to spend every dollar you earn on payday?
She tapped the corner of her mouth. I guess not. What do you think about my stat points? She asked. I've got 3.
Put them all into endurance,
Dante said.
It'll help your archery a little bit, but more important, it'll help your HP a lot to improve your odds of surviving and keeping up with the rest of us.
Not agility? She frowned at her stats display. I could do more damage if I improved my agility, couldn't I?
Yeah, but you can work on becoming a better archer later on. Right now, your sole focus is on not slowing us down any more than you have to. It's going to be a while before you could make any real contribution to the team.
Fair, Tandy sighed. Her health bar brightened over her head as her available HP moved from 40 to 49. Definitely a lot better than before, but she still had a long, long way to go to catch up to her teammates. Zen the Seer was waiting for them at the city gate. She swayed on her feet, and the smell of sour ale came away from her like a punch in the face.
Farmer Poke needs you,
she pleaded. She took Tandy's hand and kneeled on the stone of the plaza.
You have to finish it,
she said.
Don't you want to finish it? And then we can move on. We'll have so many adventures together.
Dante pulled Tandy away.
We got rid of the crows, he said. Poke's problem is solved.
You have to finish,
Zen insisted.
You have to talk to him.
Tandy pulled away nervously as they kept walking back toward the Bell and Bones, but Zen shouted after them.
Cowards! Quitters! One day you'll be sorry you didn't listen to me.
I'm sorry now,
Dante muttered. Ben laughed, but Tandy kept looking behind, worried. Innkeeper Bell was waiting for them too, though it was still fairly early in the morning, and any reasonable person would have been sleeping instead of sweeping. Maybe the NPCs weren't on a schedule here.
Clara!
She cried and embraced her niece. Dante couldn't help but notice that the two looked nothing alike. Different body types, different coloring. Back in the real world, their ancestors would have come from several thousand miles away from one another. Maybe one of them was adopted. But probably, he thought, they'd been designed by 2 different artists who didn't speak to each other. Or maybe the AI generating them didn't have any sense that human beings who were related should look something like one another. He couldn't guess which was more likely. Belle turned to them. "Thank you so much for returning my Clara to me," she said. She motioned at her alleged niece, who didn't seem any more interested than she had been before. "Clara is very grateful for your assistance, and she's offered to pay for your lodgings here in the Bell and Bones for as long as you wish to stay." Clara had done nothing of the kind. She hadn't said a single word since they'd arrived. But it didn't seem like the right moment to argue.
Nice. We'll have a home base,
Dante said.
Does that mean we get to sleep in proper beds for a while?
Etta asked.
Only when we're in town,
Ben answered.
But damn, does a real bed sound like heaven right now. And I wonder if there are showers here.
"I'll show you the way," Belle said. "Follow me." She made her way toward the thick-beamed stairs, humming along with the background music. Before Team USA could follow her up, though, a new notification appeared. Not the quest completion they were expecting. Instead, it was a new mission entirely. The Skull King's Crown. The menace of Skull Keep has risen after 1,000 years, and a hero must end his reign of terror. Take his crown and entrap him for another 1,000 years. Levels 9 through 12. Rewards: 7,000 XP, Skull King's Crown, 500 gold. This is a mandatory quest.
Shit, Ben said. Level 9?
Shit, Etta repeated.
This is a catastrophe. Look at the global chat, it's going crazy. Every team in Alternus got the same mission at the same time. It's a race, and we're already running behind.
Let me think,
Dante said. They were running behind for sure. But what else was new? It was all part of the territory, and Dante was one of the best in the world at finding exploits and loopholes. That was why the government was paying him big bucks to be here. He opened up a new spreadsheet and titled it Skull Keep.
The first step,
He said,
is to find out as much as we can about the zone and its monsters so we can go in fully prepared with our eyes wide open.
Etta and Ben were nodding in agreement. His eyes flicked over to Tandy. He hated to go along with her sentimental, crouton-petting instincts, but in this case, it was the only way forward. He sighed.
Now come on, we got a lot of NPCs to talk to.
You're listening to Ctrl-Alt-Destroy, starring Summer Glau. Produced by Realm, your portal to another world. Realm. Listen away. Ctrl-Alt-Destroy is written by Andrea Phillips, Maurice Broaddus, Jacqueline Koyanagi, and E.C. Myers. Executive produced by Molly Barton and Julian Yap. Audio production, sound design, editing, and theme music by Amanda Rose Smith.